So you kind of have the forming, storming, norming kind of thing. And this was our storming phase. So anyway, one of the early things that happened, this was, I was asked, our security team, I ran a security team of around 30 professionals, and we were asked to put wireless networks in all of the conference rooms in state government. And so at that time, that was kind of a cutting edge issue. Now, everyone has wireless everywhere in their homes and in, coffee shops and everything. But the reality is that was a cutting edge thing at the time. And my background was, National Security Agency, and we call 3-letter agencies in Washington. So NSA, CIA, DIA, FBI, and I had done my homework, and I knew that this was bad. Security, we couldn't allow Wi-Fi in conference rooms because it was going to be a problem. It was not secure. And there were stories in the papers, lots of stories in the US papers about people pulling into Home Depot and Walmart, not Walmart, but Home Depot and Lowe's and different parking lots or car parks, and hacking into cash register because the Wi-Fi's weren't secure. So I had all these papers. So basically, Terry asked me to prepare. We were in the staff meeting, and it was like 10 of us in the staff meeting, and we got to that agenda item, and Terry says, Dan, tell us how we're going to securely put Wi-Fi in all of our government conference rooms. And I said, well, Terry, I've decided to cancel this project. We're not going to do it. We're not putting Wi-Fi in any of the conference rooms. And Terry just looked at me with this stunned look. And I have, she asked everyone to leave the conference room but me. So it was just me and Terry looking at each other. And I've never seen a government agency meeting end so quickly in my life, because this was an hour-long meeting. It was 15 minutes in, and she just ended it. And she looked me in the eye and she said, Dan, if that's your answer, you cannot be the CISO in the state of Michigan. Basically, I was worried I was going to get fired. And I said, well, wait a minute, Terry, you don't understand. Let me explain. I had all these white papers and all this. I was going to show her all my background materials about and articles and books about why this was a bad idea. And she says, no, stop. I read all those articles. I know what you're going to say. I know what you're thinking. But she said, I've been to Dow, Ford, Chrysler, and General Motors. They all have Wi-Fi in their conference rooms. What do they know that you don't know? And so they're like, so I'm like, whoa. She says, I'm giving you 1 week to figure this out and come back and give us a plan, not to deliver it, but to give us the plan to do it securely, or you're fired. So that was a real scary moment for me, Bikash. It was scary. I almost thought I was going to lose my job. I ran back.
Yeah.
I just one more quick thing I'll tell you. I went back to my team. They were like, did we tell them we're canceling Wi-Fi? And I said, no, we're doing Wi-Fi. We've got to figure this out. So 2 years later, we actually win the award for top Wi-Fi security in the whole country. But that really was a paradigm shift for me as a person. That security needs to be enabling. They need to be coming with solutions and not just problems. Security pros can't just say, no, can't do it. You've got to come up with a solution that's going to do security on time, on budget, with the right level of security. So that's my most embarrassing story, how I almost got fired, but it turned into a good thing. Terry and I are still friends 20 years later, actually, well, 18 years later. And now, Bikash, I want to know what your most embarrassing moment in your career was.
Sure. I would be happy to. But before that, did you manage to get fired? No. But you tried.
I kept my job.
Honestly.
I did not get fired, and it ended up being a paradigm shift for me, because I started to think about security differently. And whenever I had a security challenge, it's like, who's doing this best? Who can we learn from? Look around. And state government is not known at that time, certainly, as one of the leaders in security. And like I said, the private sector was doing that better than us. And we learned from that, and we actually improved. We actually got better through that experience.
Interesting. Very interesting learning. I believe that there's a lot of interesting takeaway as well, outside of a very entertaining story for sure. So let me share mine.
Yes,
so
please.
This is quite a long time back, huh? So almost like a couple of decades back. And as a kind of little bit prelude to the story, which is important, I used to do a lot of magic shows. I mean, long time back. And by magic shows, I don't mean the rabbit out of the hat trick kind of magic shows, but more like the David Blaine kind of stuff, mentalism and close-up magic and those
Yes.
kind of stuff. I used to do on stage as well. So I was doing like opening shows for college fests and closing shows for college fests. So I was doing it at a pretty decent level. So and also I started my first startup around that period. We were doing this automated penetration testing on the
Nice.
cloud. So that was what we were working on. So now I went for a visit to Paris to meet some partners, and that was like a slightly gloomy day and little bit of drizzles. And I remember I was walking down the stairs of they call it subway, right?
Yeah. Subway. Yeah.
Like the underground, yeah, they call it subway.
Yeah.
So or no, they call it metro.
Oh, the metro.
I
Yeah.
guess the metro, yeah, the underground transport system. Yeah, US is the subway and London is the underground.
Yeah.
And down the stairs, and there was a guy who looked like from East Europe. He came and told me that I'd like to sell this iPhone. An iPhone just got launched, and would you like to buy? And I was the BlackBerry guy during those days.
Yeah.
No, I'm happy with my phone. So I was walking down, and this guy still followed me and said, you know what, I need some money badly, and my sister is at the hospital. I need some money. It'll be great help if you could buy this. And he eventually came down, like he started with somewhere around few €100 and came down to some €20. And eventually he told me, you know what, I need it very, very badly. Can you give it to me? I mean, I'll give it to you at €10 or something like that. And here's the iPhone, and I'm also going to give you this camera, a small point and shoot automatic camera. And I took that phone and I swiped, and everything was working fine. And I thought this is interesting because at €10, if you get a device which is working, in worst case, even if things are not perfect, we can go open it up and look into and use it for hacking. So I
Sure.
found that, and I think I became a little bit greedy. I wouldn't say I tried to help that guy, but I said, okay, here you go. I gave the €10. He took this iPhone and the camera, put it into a small brown bag and gave it to me. And I took that and he started running up the stairs. And I opened this brown bag, and inside that, there were 2 potatoes.
Oh, wow.
So right in front of me, he did the classic switch, which I was pretty well trained to do.
Wow.
Switch in front of me, and that was probably the most expensive pair of potatoes I have still, I've bought till date.
That's a great
So
story.
humbling experience being a security professional. I mean, that reminds me to stay humble.
That's great.
Great.
Great story.
So Dan, let's get started with some real crisis example. Today's topic is handling crisis. Please share some examples of some real crisis that you dealt with in the past.
Well, I've dealt with lots of them. When I was CSO, for sure, one of the biggest ones was the blackout, the Northeast blackout of 2003. So, we had just gone through the whole Y2K, and I started in Michigan government in '97. And, I'd come from an NSA kind of top secret background, and Michigan government was very different than that, of course. Not a lot of very secure facilities, but the whole focus during those years from 97 to 2000 was Y2K. So we had prepared, what if, all the computers break? And we had done a lot of good work to prepare for that. And that went kind of without a hitch, but we were all sitting there in the emergency center, on January or actually, December 31st, January 1st of 2000. But then 3 years later, we had, of course, 2 years later, we had 9/11, but not so much happened in Michigan. But 2 years after that, we had a large blackout in Michigan where the whole Northeast lost power. For 2 days, basically, we lost power. And it was basically a situation where we had to all go to the emergency coordination center and respond to no computers, no power, no huge issues. A lot of people thought it was, in the US, thought it was another 9/11. They thought, it was another terrorist attack. And all the people in the emergency coordination center, we were there for 4 straight days in a bunker with, a generator. And responding to all kinds of issues. The parts of the state came back like 24 hours later. Other parts came back more like 2 days later, and some came back 3 days later. But it was a major emergency, and New York was without power for a couple of days. A lot of things happened, trying to get water from one side of the state to the other. Some things you wouldn't necessarily think about, like it was a very hot day. It was like 95 degrees Fahrenheit in the U.S. And restaurants were having to close. There was no air conditioning, but they were serving spoiled food. And so like there were food, inspectors who were having to, close restaurants because people were eating spoiled food in Detroit. And they needed the technology to support that, but they had no power. So there was lots of things we had to do. And during that time, I met tons of people who ended up becoming leaders in Michigan government over the next decade. The person I worked closely with was Colonel Etchu, who was running the whole emergency for state police in Michigan. She ended up becoming the director of Michigan State Police. So in those kind of emergencies, if you're ready, if you're prepared, if you've got good plans in place, it can really strengthen your security organization to be prepared. That was not a hacking attack, although some people thought it was a hacking attack initially. But we responded to that, and that was a real life emergency we responded to.
That's interesting. That's very interesting. I mean, that happened due to more like a natural calamity, but that's something which I think all the nations today want to stay prepared for, right? So, Dan,
Correct.
let's talk about some of the drills that you have done.
Sure.
And so, any of these large scale cyber crisis drills that you conducted in the government?
Yep. Yeah. So one of the ones that I want to mention was a series of drills that the U.S. Department of Homeland Security does called Cyberstorm. That's CYBER Storm, STORM. And the one I'll tell you about, the story I'm going to tell you is from Cyberstorm 1, which was the first one. But they're now up to, I think, Cyberstorm 7 is coming. They do this every 2 years. And these are global exercises. So, they do them in U.S. states. They use federal agencies in the U.S., but I know the United Kingdom and France and Australia and New Zealand were all part of these exercises. So this was a global exercise. We were at the first one, and my team had prepared. This is a week-long exercise. It was not everyone on our team, obviously, but it was a large group of people. And I tell people, if you want to understand what Cyberstorm 1 was like, I'm thinking this is back in 2006. So this is going back to the first Cyberstorm, but there's a lot of really good lessons we learned from that. Watch the movie Die Hard 4, Die Hard 4 with Bruce Willis. It's called Live Free and Die Hard, where all the power goes out and bombs are going off, and it's scary stuff. So we had a situation where the first day of this exercise, it was probably over the top, and most cyber exercises today wouldn't start this way, but they had bombs going off, kind of like 9/11 again. They blew up our data center. They blew up big parts of government. They hacked other parts of government, and all of our services were down for 2 days. And it was very, very intense. And we were like getting beat up. We were like humbled. Our team was just like, we were like done. I mean, we were really kind of overwhelmed. By Thursday afternoon, though, this is what I want to tell you about. By Thursday afternoon, we were told there's one more thing you have to do in this exercise to train your team. And we said, okay, what is that? They said, we have to get our Bull mainframe.